And then in question 12, Don says, how does the healing that you just told us about relate to the healing done in the King's Chamber in the Giza Pyramid? And Ra says, there are two advantages to doing this working in such a configuration of shapes and dimensions. Firstly, the disruption or interruption of the violet ray, I correct myself, of the violet red armoring or protective shell is automatic. Should probably reread this. Ra says that there are two advantages to doing this working in such a configuration of shapes and dimensions, so the pyramid as opposed to crystal healing. Firstly, the disruption or interruption of the violet ray armoring or protective shell is automatic. So in the pyramid, this is automatic. You don't have to do it. It's a very strong thing, by the way. But let's go to the next part where Ra says, in the second place, the light is configured by the very placement of this position in the 7 distinctive color or energy vibratory rates, thus allowing the energy through the crystallized being focused with the crystal to manipulate with great ease the undisturbed and, shall we say, carefully delineated palette of energies or colors, both in space-time and in time-space. So, okay, so what's the difference between the healing with the crystal that we just explored and the healing in the pyramid? Thankfully, for the past 2 videos, or 2 sessions, or at least 1 session, I forget, we've been talking about pyramids, right? I think 2 sessions. So we have the information on how the healing works in the pyramid. Go watch those videos if you haven't already, as I always say. But how does this differ from crystal healing? Well, in the first place, they said that there is the automatic opening of the violet red shell, the protective shell, that is present in the entity as they hold onto their resistances, who they are. So that in the pyramid becomes automatic. I mean, you get in there and it's just a breaking of the shell. There is no interaction between healer for this. I mean, this is, you go there, this is the place where you get, in essence, you, the ego self, gets destroyed, and you are able to see a proper configuration for yourself, or are offered that. So in the second place, the light in the pyramid is configured by the very placement of this position in the 7 distinct color or energy. So this is the spreading, the prism of the prana, the second spiral, that is, because the first spiral ends in the Queen's Chamber, and then the second spiral opens up and spreads out its spectrum into the healing chamber, which is the King's Chamber. So-called King's Chamber. It's a healing chamber. And so this, they say, energy vibratory rates, thus allowing the energy through the crystallized being. This energy goes through the crystallized being or the healer, focused with the crystal, to manipulate with great ease the undisturbed and, shall we say, carefully delineated palette of energies or colors, both in space-time and in time-space. So this is the energy. What they're playing with is the colors in space-time and time-space of, I believe, the entity, as it's almost, I'm trying to build an analogy here or a visualization, because there is the prana, which is all there is, and then there is the entity who is receiving the prana and is all distorted, that needs the healing, right? So there is a sort of projection into which the healer can actually read and say, oh, yes, of course, your red ray, it's all messed up this way, and your orange ray this way. Of course, I'm saying it with a caricaturesque depiction of what's happening with the healer, but the healer is able to do more subtle work, if you will. So this is both projected in space-time and in time-space, because we do exist in both realities, as you well know. So that's what's happening in the pyramid. This is the difference. Ra says, thus, the unarmored being may be adjusted rapidly. This is desirable in some cases, especially when the armoring is the largest moiety of the possibility of continued function of body complex activity in this density. The trauma of the interruption of this armoring vibration is then seen to be lessened. So here is a process in which the healer already sort of does the adjustments with the person or the entity to be healed. That's where they say in the first phrase, thus the unarmored being, that one which the unarmored, the red-violet shell is open up and you're unarmored, you may adjust yourself rapidly through the healer and the configuration of the pyramid. This is desirable in some cases, especially when the armoring is the largest moiety of the possibility of continued function of body complex activity in this density, which means that moiety just means larger portion or greater portion of the continued function of the body complex. Let me explain this a little bit. The protective shell functions as a way in which you are arranged. And remember, the red and violet is a sort of identity, a metaphysical identity that you have. That configuration, which is read easily through this red ray manifestation, violet ray manifestation in unison with red ray, then creates this sort of bubble identity that you are. We all have this, okay? Our malleability to adjust and adapt to things is what causes the possibility of us not suffering to new changes, because reality is impermanent. But the more stiff you are, the more attached you are to reality, to the physical reality, then that would be the largest moiety of the possibility of continued function of the body complex activity in this density, which is a density of rapid change, to my belief at least. And if you're very stuck with your beliefs and who you are, then this is, and you can, I mean, I gave the example before, where I said that if you're holding to a value or a sort of concept of ideas that you have, and you cannot break it, you can't accept it, you cannot admit this in front of people, I can't do this, you're stifling yourself into this position that it's unbreakable. But you are impermanent, quite in fact. And so by you becoming malleable, you are easily able to adjust. And so this is what Ross says, that it's needed mostly for those entities that have a very, what do they call it, where the armoring, that red-violet ray shell, is so stiff that, or so strong, that it's the largest portion that disallows the entity to continue living in this density. You can see already how this goes into people who just cannot accept reality, and they suffer, and their suffering translate into disease and deterioration of the body, or illness that simply signals the body that we don't want to be in this reality anymore. In fact, the configuration of my energy centers is no longer compatible with this reality because I reject everything. Fine. You know, I'm not saying that this is bad, but if you want to continue in this reality and enjoy this reality for whatever reason, I mean, you can end it at any time. There's no judgment there, of course, but this is just the functionings of the entity. And so Ra says that the trauma of the interruption of this armoring vibration is then seen to be lessened. This is the key phrase at the end, to see that the trauma of the interruption of this armoring vibration is then seen to be less. If let's say you're very stiff with your beliefs and who you are, and how things should be and how much of a victim you have been, how guilty you are as well of so many things you have done and so on. You're carrying with all this burden. And I try to tell you, you're full of it. You know, that's all nonsense. All you're saying, you're not any of that. I'm trying to break your shell here. And no, you're very, stuck with this. Then if we were able to break this to a degree that you say, you know what, all those things that I used to think about myself, victimhood or guiltiness, and all my identities and all that doesn't matter anymore. I mean, say what you will never offend me. That means that the interruption of this armoring vibration is less now. Whereas before it was very stiff. So you can see how this works. Let's go into the last parts of this because there's more. Ra says, we take this opportunity to pursue our honor duty as some of those creating the pyramid shape to note that it is in no way necessary to use this shape in order to achieve healings. For seniority of vibration has caused the vibratory complexes of mind, body, spirit complexes to be healed, to be less vulnerable to the trauma of the interrupted armoring. So this is important to realize as well that the pyramids were built, if my calculations are right, about 5,000 years ago, so 3,500 BC. I think that's what Ra gave the indication, and I think it actually matches the estimations as to where and when the pyramids were built. So it's one of those things that in the raw material we find congruency with what history is telling us. How they were built, well, that's a big discrepancy. But anyhow, that was built back then, and it's no longer. What do they say? It's no longer needed. I can't find the wording. Whatever. The shape in order to achieve healings. Yes, we don't need to have the shape to achieve healings because we have seniority of vibration. Seniority of vibration means that those who are incarnated here have the preference or predilection of being incarnated here because of their vibration is now higher. The closer we get to harvest, which we already are in, then the more the seniority of vibration takes place for people to be incarnated here, because you have a bigger chance of graduating to fourth density. So that's why you're here. You're here because you have a better chance. And those who say animals who have been graduating in the last decades, then chances is that they need a full cycle, 75,000 years. So why start now? I mean, some of them might have, and they may be present here, and that's just part of their evolution. They're taking great amount of catalyst for their evolution further in other planetary spheres, as this one is going to change soon in space-time. But yeah, that's what's happening. So seniority of vibration allows mind, body, spirit complexes to be healed because they're less vulnerable to the trauma of the interrupted armoring. So we're easily affected by these changes and say, screw it, I'm in. Whatever the change is, let's do it. We are more tolerant to that as humanity. So last thing that I would add here is what Ra finishes this and say, furthermore, as we have said, the powerful effect of the pyramid with its mandatory disruption of the armoring, if used without the crystallized being, used with the wrong intention or in the wrong configuration, can result in further distortions of entities, which are, perhaps, the equal of some of your chemicals which cause disruptions in the energy fields in like manner. Various important things here, or just a couple at least, that I will emphasize. First, they say that the powerful effect of the pyramid, we're talking about something that automatically breaks that shell for the healing. And also in the Queen's Chamber or Initiation Chamber, intensifies the seeking of the Creator, so as to create a sort of mystical experience. To me, it seems that happens in the Initiation Chamber is that it's very strong. So the pyramid is quite in fact very strong. And that if it's used without a crystallized being, yes, somebody to take care of you while you're being healed within the pyramid, used with the wrong intention. So what would be the wrong intention? Who knows? Or in the wrong configuration. That to me sounds like the energy centers. But maybe the wrong intentions is to become rich. You want to become rich, so you will become a lot more distorted. Because that's not the intention of healing, you see? So that would be the wrong intention. To me, one of them. It's not the healing. And the wrong configuration, of course, is just the proper, aside or in contrast to the proper configuration that should result out of this, then this can cause further distortions as equal to some of our chemicals which cause disruptions in the energy fields in like matter. I believe that the chemicals they're talking about are drugs, psychedelics, or anything that has been proven to see how they disrupt your energy fields, and you become weaker. This is something that I remember seeing in a documentary by I think it was in Gaia TV, where they showed the Russian, I forgot his name, not that it's easy to remember their names, but this man created a machine that you could use to see the energy centers through the energy field that we radiate, right? Or electromagnetic field, which is something that we can measure with our current devices. And so he could read certain energy centers and frequencies and so on of the energy field, and said, well, these are the energy centers. And after a psychedelic ceremony, people become a lot more crunched. Like their energy field is crunched inwards. And then it may radiate again depending on how much healing they did, because, I mean, people can come all crunched up as well through the psychedelic experience or ceremony. They become all crunched in different ways, and then depending, on how the healing went, they can become a lot more radiant. So this is, once again, you can see I keep making the parallels of psychedelics to healing in pyramid and other work, because there's definitely a connection there. And now Ra says, equal to some of your chemicals which cause these disruptions. So to me, that's the chemicals they're talking about. Drugs are chemicals. Yes, they may come from plants and they're organic and so on, but they're still chemicals that are altering your biochemistry, which is, and yes, there is the point, and I'm just going to elaborate a little bit on psychedelics, because I owe a great deal of my transformation to psychedelics, but I'm not advocating for them, nor am I discouraging people from using them, but speaking the truth and what seems to be. And the truth is that you have a biochemistry in your body that is disrupted by your usual energy center configuration. Your traumas, your identities, your sufferings, and so on. All those attachments that you have. So, that biochemistry can be regulated by inner work. You becoming aware of the self. Sure, you can consume certain chemicals that are helpful, and they seem to have a spirit. If we can subscribe to the shamanist traditions, which I do subscribe, they have a spirit which help you to, and certain plants, of course, or not certain plants, but plants in general. That's why I always make the distinction between plants and laboratory chemicals. They do cause the same thing, but there's a different energy there. There's a spirit. Yes, there is. And so, you can use it, and you will alter your biochemistry for a period of time. That period of time may show you parts of you for healing and so on. Better to do it with a healer, right intentions, and of course, accepting the configurations that are offered to you. But that's it. The rest becomes your biochemistry again. And if you go back, which is something that we're told a lot in psychedelics, integration is crucial. So integration is simply taking that offering that was given to you. If you don't do it, then you go back to reconfiguring your energy centers as they were previously, but now you have, on top of that, information that you have downloaded, so to speak, from this experience, this ceremony, and now you need to deal with that too. So you now have a cognitive dissonance with your previous self identity and the current one that is longing to be expressed. Anyhow.